Today is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. It is currently 3 p.m., hours before polls close on the east coast of the United States in what might be the closest presidential election in American political history. Or it might be a more decisive election depending on how numbers roll in and events play out in the next 12 to 24 hours. As is tradition, each election day I have donned my nicest suit in acknowledgement of the importance of the day. I do not, however, think it is important because this is the most consequential election in American history. I believe that Election Day is important, especially in this election cycle, because it brings into sharp focus the tension between the democratic ideals most Americans aspire to and the plutocratic reality we face in the neoliberal West. Those are a lot of political junkie buzzwords, so let me just use normal language to describe what I mean and how I feel about a day like today. The 2024 presidential race has been described as a competition between two opposites, an old white male oligarch versus a younger black and South Asian middle class woman, a party that will fight for an America for Americans versus a party that will fight for freedom for all, a candidate that has been described by his critics as a, quote, fascist to the core and a wannabe dictator, versus a candidate that's similarly been described by her critics as a radical left lunatic and a shitty vice president, along with various slurs and other offensive remarks that I cannot repeat here. One would assume then that these two candidates and their political parties offer opposite views not only of the state of the nation, but of the basic facts and functioning of our government and our world. The Republican Party, since the repeal of Roe v. Wade as a consequence of the Dobbs decision in 2022, has advocated for and passed legislation on the state level significantly limiting or completely banning women's rights to abortion and other reproductive procedures, in some cases with absolutely no exceptions. In certain states like Texas, there are even programs implemented by Republican executives like Greg Abbott, which provide monetary bounties for those who report women, doctors, or other healthcare workers who have participated in any form of abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, a point at which most women do not yet know if they are pregnant or not. The Democratic Party simply advocates for a reversal of the Dobbs decision and an enshrinement of a woman's right to choose on the national level. This, amongst other social and healthcare issues, including the recognition of the rights of trans folks, the future of the Affordable Care Act, the rights of unions to organize and protest, and climate change, separate the Republican and Democratic parties rather significantly, presenting us with different visions for the future of our country that each citizen can cast a vote for depending on their views and values. A democracy in its simplest form. There are, however, a significant number of issues in which the two parties suspiciously align. In my experience, these are the issues that most politicians are likely to deflect away from, instead opting to focus on the social topics we just covered. Israel's ongoing genocide of Palestinians, for example, remains an issue which the Democratic nominee has repeatedly refused to take a concrete stance on until the past few days, probably due to her campaign's insistence that the American and Arab vote in Michigan is too important to lose, and which the Republican nominee has expressed full support for, stating that Israel needs to, quote, finish what they've started, and that Israel, quote, has to have a victory, and it's taking a long time. The current president, a longtime member of the Democratic Party, has rhetorically turned his back to the conflict while simultaneously claiming that the administration is working tirelessly to reach a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, a terrorist organization which the vast majority of Palestinians have no formal participation in or affiliation with. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, since October 7, 2023, over 44,000 Palestinians, including around 16,000 children, have been killed by the Israeli military, funded primarily by the United States with bipartisan approval. Around 1,000 Israelis have been killed in that same time period, according to Israeli officials. Immigration is another one of these policies which both parties seem to have a similar stance. First, it is unknown exactly how many undocumented immigrants reside in the United States, but estimates range from anywhere between 12.3 million in May of 2023, according to the Center for Immigration Studies, and 16.8 million in 2023, according to the Federation of American Immigration Reform. Both of these organizations favor lower immigration levels and push for conservative policies that reduce immigration. These are just the newest numbers I could find. Pew Research Center, a nonpartisan institute, estimates that 10.9 million undocumented immigrants were residing in the United States as of 2022. Regardless, these numbers fall significantly short of the Republican candidate's claim that there are 20 to 30 million undocumented immigrants within U.S. borders. Even conservative institutes disagree with this candidate's claims. It is also a fact that, according to a study by the DOJ's National Institute of Justice, undocumented immigrants are arrested for violent and drug crimes at less than half the rate of native-born U.S. citizens and at a quarter of the rate of native-born citizens for property crimes. In 2022, according to the California Budget and Policy Center, undocumented immigrants across the country contributed $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes through a combination of sales taxes, property taxes, and personal income taxes. These individuals are also only eligible for some social programs in a minority of states, and the expenses of these programs are relatively small, meaning that the presence of undocumented immigrants significantly positively impacts the American economy, allowing for increased funding to Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance, all programs which these immigrants cannot access. Undocumented immigrants hold a significant portion of jobs in our most important sectors, including agriculture, construction, and hospitality, amongst others. And unemployment rates for U.S.-born workers remain at near record lows, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, showing that undocumented immigrants have little to no negative effect on employment of U.S. citizens. Why then do both parties cite undocumented immigrants as a significant issue for our country? These immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than U.S. citizens, contribute more to our economy per capita than U.S. citizens, and they do not affect the employment outcomes of U.S. citizens in any measurable way. Why did the Democratic and Republican parties then come together and agree to draft a border bill that would impose an emergency authority, preventing border crossers from seeking asylum and enabling increased deportations until the border encounters reach under a weekly average of 4,000 crossings per day? This authority could also be imposed by the federal government at any time and without public announcement. The American Immigration Council states that on any given day, a would-be asylum seeker would have no idea whether they would be allowed to seek asylum in the United States or not. The bill would also increase funding for ICE to raise their detention bed number by almost 50% from 34,000 to at least 50,000, allowing for increased detentions. The bill states that it will eventually allow for the implementation of an easier asylum and green card process for immigrants, but amidst the global refugee crisis, it is unlikely that the metrics required to implement those processes will be met anytime soon. The bill also does not address the status of any immigrants already in the United States, does not speak at all to the global trends causing migration rates to rise significantly, and only makes it harder for immigrants to begin the asylum process, even if that process becomes faster once it begins. So, like I asked earlier, why do both parties agree on this bill, or on the issue of Israel's invasion of Palestinian territory? Perhaps because the livelihood of the American political establishment relies on its attention to the needs of corporate donors, rather than its attention to the needs of the people it actually represents. The majority of Americans believe that the economy is rigged to advantage the rich and powerful. The majority of Americans believe that climate change is real and that carbon taxes should be implemented on major fossil fuel emitters, and that immigrants strengthen the United States. The simple truth is that regardless of which candidate or party you vote for in this presidential election, or any presidential election, it feels as though the will of the people will not be taken into account. A two-party system, where both parties hold the interests of their rich corporate donors in higher regard than the interest of the people, is not a democracy. It is in the interest of the rich to maintain significant stratification between themselves and the middle and lower classes. So, immigration is villainized and the majority face increased taxes so the wealthy elite get to pay less. It is in the interest of the rich to maintain social division so the focus is taken off of these class differences, so each party aligns itself with opposing social issues while maintaining similar economic and foreign policies in the background. It is in the interest of the rich to take advantage of disaster and instability in order to justify massive defense contracts and the implementation of similar plutocracies across the globe, and so America maintains its unprecedented global military presence in the name of spreading freedom and democracy, all at the cost of almost $1 trillion annually and thousands of lives. Neither party is incentivized to combat these goings on and are in fact incentivized to encourage their continuation. And so we continue with the status quo, regardless of which party's candidate ends up winning this cycle's election. I will mark my ballot for the party which will not detain and deport millions of undocumented immigrants, the party which has not advocated for fascist ideals, and the party which will not take reproductive rights away from women across the country. But I feel a tension. A few minutes ago, I said that I believe that Election Day is important, especially in this election cycle, because it brings into sharp focus the tension between the democratic ideals most Americans aspire to and the plutocratic reality we face in the neoliberal West. The contrast between our collective desire for a better future for all Americans, even those without documentation or legal status, and the desire of the wealthy to take advantage of us at the cost of our livelihoods and the future of our global environment. Between true democracy, where the people collectively have a say on the direction of the state towards which they contribute significant amounts of time and resources, and plutocracy, a form of government where the rich collectively rule over the middle class and over the poor. We get to cast our ballots today to decide between two parties, but unfortunately, we do not get the privilege to decide the future trajectory of our country, not in this election and not in the next. And I think that a day like this, where these tensions are placed into a sharp focus, is essential for us to begin to understand how the world truly works and how we might come together to help change it for the better. Because although we may not have a voice now, at least not a loud one, it doesn't have to be that way. This video, in a way, is also my introduction to you. So, hello, my name is Ryan White, and I am an aspiring social commentator and political journalist. While today's discussion might seem grim or depressing, it doesn't have to be that way. I hope that as we dive into more social and political topics as this channel grows its wings, I'm able to communicate that despite the challenges our society faces, I am encouraged every day by the actions of those who care deeply about the well-being of their country, of their local communities, and of their friends and family and those close to them. This video touches on some serious topics that we will discuss a bit deeper in the future, and probably not in a suit and tie, but I also want to acknowledge that a day like today is important for another reason. It shows that tens of millions of us care enough about those around us to share our voices and advocate for a better future, no matter the consequences of doing so. And that is something beautiful. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next video.